There's a moment in life that stings more than betrayal. It's when someone questions who you are, and you catch yourself rushing to explain, that tight breath, that racing thought, but I didn't mean it like that. You scramble for clarity, thinking it will save you, that if they just understood, this would all go away. But it doesn't, because the moment you explain, you shrink, you hand them the microphone, you hand them the stage. And worse, you hand them your authority. They're not listening for truth, they're watching for weakness, and you just gave it to them, wrapped in good intentions. This world doesn't reward clarity, it rewards presence. Not the words you say, but the silence you hold. You've been told that speaking clears your name. But what if staying silent made you untouchable? What if every time you explained yourself, you gave them permission to judge you? And what if the real game was never about being right, but about being unreadable? You've been on trial long enough. Let's end the case and start building the kind of power that never has to defend itself. The kind they talk about behind closed doors, the kind they fear because they can't decode it. Stay here, because what's coming next is what no one ever taught you, how to own a room without ever saying a word. Most people don't realize how loud they sound when they're trying to look calm. The hands fidget, the smile strains, the voice shakes, just slightly, but enough, and underneath it all, one desperate thought: please believe me, but here's the truth. In power dynamics, belief doesn't come from honesty, it comes from control. The moment you defend yourself, no matter how logical or soft or noble your words may be, your frame collapses, because defense is reaction, and reaction is submission. They accuse you, you explain. Who's leading? Not you. You're not guiding the room, you're being dragged by it. This is what David Blackwell called the transfer of narrative power. He taught that when you justify, you're not just giving an answer. You're accepting their right to ask, and the one who grants that right loses. It doesn't matter how brilliant your explanation is, because even if you win the argument, you've already lost the image. They don't remember your words. They remember that you needed words. Think about it. In a room full of people, who do we respect more? The one who calmly explains why he's not what they say, or the one who lets silence turn into tension and owns it? We mistake understanding for control, but control doesn't speak, control waits. When someone calls you arrogant, and you respond with, "No, I'm not, I was just trying to," you've already lost the high ground. You're not above it, you're in it, knee-deep. And the ones watching, they don't see you clearing the air, they see you sweating in it. Here's the switch: people don't attack what's untouchable, they attack what looks like it needs to prove itself. And the moment you defend, you prove you care. That's the emotional trigger, that's what they're hunting. Not truth, reaction, because reaction means they reached you. They don't need to win the argument if they already own your attention. So here's what David taught: next time someone throws shade, pause, let the silence expand, let the tension cook. And when you finally speak, if you choose to, make sure it's a move, not a response. A king doesn't justify the crown, he just wears it. So let them speak, let them assume, let them dig, let them flail, because while they're spinning stories, you're just watching. And that stillness, that's what makes people nervous. They don't know what you're thinking. They don't know if you're planning something. They don't know if they went too far, and that's the point. Uncertainty is your leverage. Let them carry the weight of their own accusation, while you carry nothing, because the second you stop defending, you start becoming dangerous. Now hold that thought, because what comes next is when silence doesn't just protect you. It flips the entire game. There's a certain kind of presence that can freeze a room. No shouting, no flexing, no explanations. Just stillness. It's not fear in the traditional sense. It's uncertainty, the sense that this person doesn't need to speak to be listened to. You've seen it before. That one executive who walks into a meeting and doesn't rush to shake hands or speak first. The room watches him anyway, or that woman at the center of the table, arms still, eyes calm. Someone throws a jab her way, she doesn't blink. And suddenly, everyone else flinches. Why? Because humans aren't trained to handle calm under pressure. We interpret it as power. Not because it's louder, but because it doesn't need volume. David Blackwell used to say, aura is built in absence. Not in what you show, but in what you withhold. People fear what they can't predict. And when you refuse to explain, you become unreadable, and the unreadable is untouchable. We live in a world that rewards visibility. Everyone's posting, performing, clarifying, explaining, but the truly powerful, they're seen less and yet talked about more. Because people can't stop trying to decode them. Power isn't just about presence, it's about perceived depth. If they think you're holding back more than you reveal, they lean in, they wonder, they hesitate. And in that hesitation, your status rises. Imagine you're accused in public, not something huge, just a quiet dig. Maybe someone says, "You always think you're the smartest one here." Most people would chuckle, try to downplay, explain their way out. But David's version, you let the silence hang, then glance, not with offense, not with a smirk, just with calm. A steady gaze, then you go back to your notes, or take a sip. That's when the magic happens. Because now everyone else in the room is left with the same question. Why didn't he react? And their minds spin. Is he actually smarter than all of us? Does he know something we don't? Was that insult a mistake? You said nothing. But they started rewriting the story in your favor. This is the power of social projection. When you don't explain, people fill in the blanks. And they usually fill them with more than what's true, because mystery inflates, and silence, delivered with presence, creates myth. You don't need to raise your voice, you just need to raise their curiosity. Because a man who doesn't react is more dangerous than one who argues. One is predictable. The other is a mirror, and people never know what they look like in front of one until it's too late. So next time they test you, don't just stay calm. Stay unknown, because that's not weakness, that's aura. And in this world, aura is the new armor. There's a trap almost everyone walks into. Someone throws shade, a subtle insult, a twisted accusation, and we feel it, like heat rising in the chest. Like pressure behind the eyes. We want to speak, not to argue, just to make things clear. But clarity isn't the goal, control is, and here's where David Blackwell revealed something most people never catch. When someone accuses you, the strongest move is not to deny it, it's to reflect it. Not with words, with silence, because silence doesn't block the accusation. It turns it into a mirror. Let me show you. Imagine this. You walk into a dinner party. Someone leans back in their chair and says, "Oh, here comes Mr. Perfect." And now you have a choice. You can laugh, try to smooth it over. Come on, I'm not like that. Or you can just pause, look past them, maybe pour yourself a drink. Maybe ask someone how their week's been. No tension, no smirk, no energy pointed back at them. And suddenly they're exposed, not because you said anything, but because you didn't. Everyone around the table sees it, that their words didn't land. That you're not even playing, and the person who spoke starts to feel it. They look around for backup, for laughs, but the energy's gone, because you didn't feed it. You made their words echo in silence. That's what David called the weight return. You didn't deflect the jab, you let them hold it, alone. Here's the truth. Most people who throw accusations aren't trying to find truth. They're trying to feel taller, and the moment you fight back, you confirm their height. But when you don't move, when you don't need to speak, they start to shrink, because they expected resistance. And instead, they got a reflection. They see their own tone, their own bitterness, their own need for attention. And most of the time, it doesn't look good, not in silence. Silence reveals what noise hides. Here's what you do next time it happens. Don't block it, don't return it, just let it land, but don't react. Hold still, let them hear themselves. And let others do the judging, because when you don't fight, you flip the frame, the accuser becomes the performer. And the crowd starts wondering why they needed to perform at all. That's the moment power shifts, not with aggression. Not with logic, but with presence, and in the right hands, presence is lethal. Now pause, because the next move isn't stillness, it's inversion, and that is colder than silence ever could be. Power games aren't just played in meetings or online. They play out in bedrooms, in living rooms, over dinner. They sound softer here, but they cut deeper. Why don't you care like you used to? You're always so distant now. You don't talk to me anymore. And just like that, you're on trial again. The average response: panic, reassure, over-explain. Of course I care. I've just been stressed. I didn't mean to be distant. And it spirals, because emotion makes you forget. The more you explain feelings, the less real they seem. David Blackwell said it clearly: emotion that has to be defended is already doubted. You don't win emotional trust by chasing it. You win it by anchoring yourself in calm. So here's what happens when you shift. Same question, same accusation. You don't care anymore, do you? You don't fight. You don't mock. You let it land. Then, after a breath, you say, that's not how I see it. And stop there. No follow-up, no elaboration, just stillness. It feels wrong at first, cold, like you're withholding. But what you're actually doing is controlling the emotional tempo, because when someone's escalating, and you don't rise with them, they lose rhythm, they start to question their tone, they soften, not because you asked, but because you didn't play. Power in relationships isn't about silence for dominance, it's about emotional steadiness. When you hold your ground, you invite the other person to find theirs, and sometimes they do, they reflect. They say, maybe I overreacted, or I just needed to be heard. But if you had jumped in with 5 reasons and 3 apologies, you never would have reached that truth. Stillness gave it space, presence gave it permission. It's the same dance, different room, whether it's business, social, or love. Whoever controls the pace controls the frame, and whoever controls the frame controls the meaning. So don't rush to fix the feeling, anchor it. Let silence do the first layer of healing, and when you speak, let it land like a stone in water. Not to splash, but to shift the current, because sometimes the calmest answer is the one they remember most. Now breathe, because the next level isn't just silence, it's disappearance. It's one thing to stay silent, it's another to vanish online. People are used to fast battles. Someone posts, someone claps back, screenshots, threads, drama, retweets. And in that chaos, power is usually handed to the loudest one. But David Blackwell understood a different tactic. One far more unsettling: disappearance. Not blocking, not deleting, just silence. No reply, no reaction, not even a glance. Because silence in public feels like rejection, but silence in digital space, it feels like erasure. Imagine this: you post something confident, strong, someone replies, "You're arrogant." Typical fake guru energy. You see it, everyone sees it. They're waiting for your response, but you say nothing, you don't reply, you don't clarify, you simply keep moving. And that's when the spiral starts, because now the attacker doesn't feel victorious, they feel exposed. They post again. Louder this time, more aggressive, trying to provoke, bait, pull you in, but you're gone, not literally, but emotionally. You left the conversation like a ghost walking through fire, untouched, and everyone watching sees the shift. This isn't strength, it's something colder, it's immunity. When someone argues with a silent opponent, they start to unravel. They explain harder, they accuse louder, but the more noise they make, the more unstable they seem. Because in digital space, presence is measured by response, and you gave them none, which means the spotlight stays on them. And eventually, they sweat. The crowd reads between the lines. Why are they still going at it? Why does he look desperate? Why hasn't she replied? The silence becomes performance art. And you never stepped on stage. That's when David would say, you win the battle not by outspeaking them, but by letting them reveal their hunger. So next time someone throws a digital jab, don't explain, don't post a defense, distort, not with lies. With energy, redirect it to the audience. You don't say, I'm not manipulative, you say. People always call you dangerous when they can't control you. That flips the frame. Now the crowd reevaluates everything. Now you're not the accused, you're the storm, and storms don't argue, they shift the sky. That's how silence wins in public, not by hiding, but by letting others overexpose themselves, because the one who speaks last often speaks from weakness, and the one who never replies, they remembered longer. Now hold your posture. Because the next layer is where silence becomes precision, and one phrase can dismantle everything. There's a darker skill most people never learn. Not how to defend themselves, but how to turn accusation into ammo, not to block it. Not to deflect it, but to make it bounce back at the one who threw it. David Blackwell called it the flip, and once you master it, you'll never see insults the same again. Let's say someone says, "You're manipulative." The old you might say, "No, I'm not. I'm just honest. You misunderstood. A wrong move." Because now you're trying to look clean, and clean is soft. Instead, the new response is sharper, cool, calm, disarming. You say, "Only people who can't be influenced call others manipulative." You didn't deny, you reframed. Now they're the one with the insecurity, and suddenly they're the one squirming. That's the technique. Take their emotional energy and flip it right back into their hands. Someone says, "You're arrogant." You smile, pause, and reply. Strange how confidence makes people uncomfortable. Boom, you didn't argue. You exposed the discomfort behind their words. You shifted the lens. Now they're defending, not you. This isn't just verbal judo, it's psychological power. You're showing them their own hand, while never revealing yours. That's what makes it so deadly. Because now, even if they try again, the crowd remembers what just happened. You stayed calm. They got rattled, and perception is sticky. You win once, and the rest echoes. Let's raise the stakes. In a meeting, someone says, "I'm not sure that idea's realistic." He tends to shoot big without thinking it through. Old instinct. Jump in, justify. Actually, I have the data. And no, now you lean back. Let the silence stretch, then calmly say, "Let's hear your strategy, then." That's the flip. You made them perform. You handed them the weight, and the room shifts, because now they have to hold attention. They have to prove. While you sit in control, it's not arrogance, it's frame dominance. And that's the unspoken war behind every interaction. Frames, who sets them, who breaks them, and who gets stuck inside them. If someone says, "You think you're better than everyone," you say, "No, I just don't think like everyone." It's simple, cold, final, because flips don't beg, they end the scene, and in a world obsessed with clarity, finality is power. Now remember this, don't use the flip to hurt, use it to rise. It's not about revenge, it's about posture, and once your posture says, "You can try me, but you won't move me," most people stop trying, because power isn't proven through resistance. It's proven through precision, and the most precise strike is the one that makes them stumble without you ever raising your voice. That's not comeback, that's control, and control doesn't shout, it whispers and still shakes the room. People think silence is passive, they think it's about avoiding conflict, but the truth is, real silence is a weapon. And the longer you hold it, the heavier it becomes, not for you, for them. There's a turning point in every confrontation. A shift, where the one who expected a fight starts to feel the weight of their own swing. They came for your reaction, but you gave them stillness, and now they're left standing in front of a crowd, performing solo. David Blackwell called it the echo collapse. It happens when someone keeps talking, and no one pushes back. Because without resistance, their attack turns inward. They say more, they repeat, they get louder, until they start to sound exactly like what they accused you of being. Emotional, bitter, insecure, all while you remain calm. No twitch, no tension. No energy wasted, because the strongest posture is composure. It tells the room, without saying a word, "I'm not part of this chaos." And that's when the real flip happens. The audience stops watching the argument. They start watching the energy. And what do they see? One person scrambling, the other still, and stillness, when it's deliberate, always wins the room. Not just because it's mysterious, but because it forces a contrast. The louder they get, the calmer you seem. The more they explain, the more grounded you appear. You become the reference point, the emotional baseline. And in every room, that baseline becomes the leader, not because you took charge, but because you didn't lose center. Here's where it gets deeper. The people watching, they start to feel something else, not just curiosity, but responsibility. Someone says, "You're toxic." You say nothing, they push again. You hold your frame. Eventually, someone else speaks. "Oh, that was unnecessary," or "He didn't even say anything." And just like that, you've gained defenders. Without asking, without nudging, your restraint created space for loyalty, because people don't rush to defend someone who's already fighting. They defend the one who never swung. That's the paradox. The more you defend, the more alone you look. The less you defend, the more others step in, because silence creates tension, but stillness earns trust. You didn't beat them. They beat themselves trying to reach you, and now you're not just respected, you're protected, because silence doesn't isolate. It invites allegiance, and that allegiance, it's built not through arguments, but through aura. Hold still. Because what comes next is when people stop testing you, not out of fear, but because they already know how it ends. The game changes when your silence becomes expectation, not surprise, not defense, just known. People stop poking when they realize the response they want isn't coming, and the silence you carry isn't empty. It's loaded with presence, with weight, with consequence. David Blackwell called it the invisible crown. It's not announced. It's not argued for, it's assumed, because every time you refuse to engage, every time you don't explain, don't flinch, you add another stone to the myth. Not just of your restraint, but of your reach. You see, people don't fear what they understand. They fear what they can't read, and when they can't predict your response, when they don't even know if you care, they become cautious. Suddenly, that little insult they wanted to toss, it doesn't feel so small anymore. Because they're not just weighing their words, they're calculating the unknown. Will this make me look petty? Oh, what if I look obsessed? What if no one else joins in? And now they're not attacking, they're hesitating, and hesitation is the death of casual disrespect. That's when you know you've crossed the line. You're no longer managing your reputation. You're managing your aura, because the goal was never to be seen as nice. It was to be seen as untouchable. You don't need to be everyone's favorite. You just need to be the one they don't want to test. Not because you're aggressive, but because you're unreadable. You don't fight rumors. You don't chase narratives. You let them swirl outside the fortress. Inside, you're unmoved, and people start to feel it. The silence isn't distance, it's definition. You're not avoiding. You're elevating, and the air gets thinner the higher you rise, so fewer reach for you, and the ones who do, they reach carefully. Now here's the real shift. You don't need to clear your name, because the people that matter already see it. And the ones who don't, they were never going to believe you anyway, so why spend breath on the unmovable? Why hand power to those who feed off reaction? You don't, you ascend instead. Let others explain themselves into exhaustion. You'll be the silence that says more, not because you're hiding, but because your clarity is internal now. And when people see that, they stop asking who you are. They start wondering how they didn't see it sooner. Now breathe again, because what's coming next is the final stage, not defense, not avoidance, but legacy. It doesn't end with silence. It ends with definition. The final stage isn't about not defending yourself. It's about becoming someone who doesn't need to. Because by now, your posture, your aura, your energy, they speak before you do. And when they speak, the message is clear. I answer to no one's frame but my own. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. You're not avoiding the world. You've redefined your place in it. People test those who seek approval, but they pause before challenging someone who looks self-owned. Because the more they see you ignore noise, the more they feel the gravity of your calm. And gravity, real gravity, doesn't chase, it pulls. David Blackwell called it the event horizon. The point where your energy becomes so still, so dense with clarity, that anything chaotic collapses when it gets too close. That's what you've built, not a defense system, a field. People walk into it and adjust, they lower their tone. They measure their words, not because you demanded it, but because your stillness made them feel their own turbulence. And here's the real twist. The more untouchable you become, the more people want to protect you. They see how you don't swing back, how you don't explain, and something primal kicks in: loyalty, respect, curiosity, because silence plus presence isn't just mystery. It's leadership, and people don't follow noise. They follow stillness that chooses when to move. You've built it. Brick by brick, through restraint, through calm, through refusal to flinch, to chase, to prove. And now your existence is the answer. You walk into rooms, and people feel something, not charm, not bravado, but depth. Like you've seen something they haven't, and now they want to see it too. That's legacy. Not what you say when people accuse you, but what they say about you when you say nothing. So from now on, no more defense, no more chasing innocence. No more giving power to the noise. You speak only when it moves something. Every word is a tool. Every pause a decision, and every silence a statement, not because you're hiding, but because you've mastered the rarest form of power. The kind that doesn't rise to defend, it stands and makes the world shift around it.